What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Paranormies Present the On Air Nearby Hour. I am Johnny Monoxide, and tonight I'm joined by Scott Taylor. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Mr. Adam Haight. What's happening?
Hey, ready for a good one.
All right, and back again from Rebel Yell, it's Musonius Rufus. What's up, dude?
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Anytime, bro. That's it. We're gonna have you on enough times where, like, you know, people are gonna, when you're not on, they're gonna miss you. That's what happened with Grayfield. Cool. Yeah. So, Scott, you have a little bit of an announcement for us, don't you, there, sir?
Do I?
Yeah.
I blanked. What am I announcing?
The thing we just talked about, with the
show topic.
The password. No, the thing we just
we have it. Okay. Yeah, we got Twitter back up and running. It is twitter.com/theparanormies. I hope I get that right. If not, I'm going to have to change it after the show.
It's all good. It'll be at.
We have a new Twitter.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah, at the Paranormies. So, I'm bad at Twitter. I don't have one, so I'm going to have to give you all that information later so you can run it. Because I don't know what I'm doing. People get on there and be like, why is he talking about, how to order Subway sandwiches or something? I know what I'm doing.
Right? Well, why would we need to do that? We can just ask Slug. So, yeah. Anyways, right on, dude. Yeah, we're back on Twitter. Yay. All right. And this week we got 2 donations. We got $7.77 from Nicholas, and we got 20 from, I just want to make sure that this name is all right, from I hope it's a fake. I'm just gonna use his initials, from GL. I don't know. He gave us $20 and he says, I'm upping my donations because of the amazing shit you guys are doing. Right on, dude. We appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah. We appreciate. Oh, and Nicholas sent a message too. Love the show. Right on. So, yeah. Appreciate it, guys. And let's get into it. Tonight, you guys, you Paranormies fans have been asking for this for a while. We are going to get into the missing 411 and David Paulides. How about that? All right, that's the last time I'm ever going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this subject.
It's really interesting stuff, and the thing I like about it is it's completely true, and you can just verify it. Like, these are actual facts. It's not like eyewitness cases or something like that where you can say, oh, maybe this didn't really happen or they're making it up. So, should I go ahead and kind of give the rundown of what it is?
Yeah, well, actually, let's talk about real quick. You want to talk about what the missing 411 thing is, or who the guy who started it? And
basically, there's this guy named David Paulides. He's a former cop. He wrote several books. The series is titled Missing 411. Basically, what it's about is people go missing. Thousands of people have gone missing in national parks, and nobody knows why, and nobody knows what happens to them. And the facts of the case are strange enough that you can't really explain it via mundane, means. Like, it's not animal attacks, it's not heart attack strokes they're having in the woods. People just go missing. They're seen literally seconds before they go missing, and they just vanish into thin air, and no one knows why. Sometimes they reappear, sometimes they don't. But this happens enough that he's been able to make 5 or 6 books about it now, and it's not slowing down. I mean, it just keeps happening. So that's the overview.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, in the sense of full disclosure here, it's like he retired and then started investigating Bigfoot, right? And then when he was at a park, a couple of rangers came to him because of the questions he was asking. They came to his hotel room outside the park and asked him if he was looking into all the missing people. And, because of the questions he was asking. And he never mixes the two subjects because, each one of these is a tragedy and people don't want to be taken advantage of, if they're going to talk to you about, losing their loved ones. You know, he never talks about Bigfoot. He just states the facts like a police officer. So
I think we should go into at the end of the episode. We can talk about that though, because Bigfoot is one of those things where I think one of the possible explanations for the reason that people don't get evidence of it is because maybe it's not quite a terrestrial thing. But, we can get into that later. I mean, there's several different possible
Not
explanations
quite terrestrial.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some sort of theory that Bigfoot basically is one of these like interdimensional type things where they can vanish in and out of thin air, and it goes towards explaining why people spot them, but no one's ever seen a body and things like that. But like we said, that's kind of a whole other topic.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, you want to go straight into the case? The cases themselves are fascinating.
yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
You
well,
know more about them than I do.
oh yeah, well, here in the Smoky Mountains, there's over 50 clusters of people, because when he started putting tags up on a map of the United States of where people go missing, they go missing in clusters, and the Smoky Mountains is known for the big three, and I guess the Dennis Martin case is right up there at number one. Give me a second, I'll find out what year that was.
So the big three cases.
Yeah, the big three missing persons cases. Dennis Martin is back in the I want to say 1970, but he was he's just a toddler, and the Martin family went up to Norris Field in the Smoky Mountains, which is along the Appalachian Trail, and they ran into another Martin family, and the kids decided to go play hide and seek. Now we're talking about a 2-year-old, just wandering around a meadow.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was Ollie Oxen Free, Dennis Martin never appeared, and his father ran down. Mr. Martin ran to the bush that he saw his son hide behind, and he was gone. And then it was Father's Day weekend that year. He told all the Martin men were out there on this little hike up from the parking lot up to Norris Field, and he told his father, the boy's grandfather, go get a ranger. And then he hauled ass down the Appalachian Trail, looking for his kid. And there's no way that kid with his stubby little legs could get off that mountain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was the biggest case of a missing person in Smoky Mountain, history. But there are other cases, but this one's famous because it's so inexplicable. An adult could go missing.
Body or anything?
No, what happened was at the same 2 hours later, down in Cades Cove at the base of the mountain, there was a family called the Key family, and they were going over to Rowan's Creek to look for bear. Cades Cove is this flat horseshoe-shaped valley that has all these old houses from the pioneers in it. Anyway, there's a creek that runs into the back of it, Rowan's Creek, and the ranger said, go there, you'll see some bear sign. And so they go there, and they see a man hiding behind the trees after hearing a scream, like a terrifying scream. And the boy, the Key boy, was like, look, Dad, there's a bear. And his dad's like, that's not a bear, let's get out of here. So yeah, and the FBI was called in on the case, and the Green Berets were even brought in to search the Smoky Mountains for this kid.
Really? They brought in the Green Berets?
Yeah, from Fort Bragg. This is one of 2 times that occurred. The other time is a similar case called the Douglas Legg case up in the Adirondacks, and it was the same FBI agent that was over that too. But to make a long story short, he had a ranger. Mr. Martin had a ranger that was looking out for him, and he said, "Let's go see if the Key family evidence is good." And then they hiked down from Norris Field down to Cades Cove in 2 hours. And said, yep, that's the best lead. That's the only lead we got. But the FBI tried to hide it from him for some reason. And the Green Berets who came weren't interested in standard search and rescue procedure. They kept their own counsel, kept their own radio and everything. So the kid's never shown back up. And there's a very eerily similar case with Douglas Legg up in New York.
Was that the one where the kid was seen after he went missing, and he was on somebody's shoulders at the top of a cliff? Are you familiar with that?
Yes. There's one where, but that was out west, where a family completely unrelated to the search and rescue saw a naked kid up on a cliff, and they thought, that's bad parenting right there. But when they got back to civilization, they saw the newspapers and called in to the sheriff, and the sheriff actually interrogated both of them like they had kidnapped the kid. But no, that was the only lead in that case too. But that was a separate case. This case is with Dennis Martin. Is there was something on the man's shoulder. The man looked like he was furry in Rowan's Creek, like he was wearing furs or something, and there was something up on his shoulder, and that's probably they think it was Dennis.
Yeah, I know the furry thing is really strange because sometimes when these people disappear, sometimes they'll show up again and they'll show up alive. And a lot of times little kids especially will describe the missing time period, where they were gone. And that's one of the things that they'll say is like the adults will be, oh, where were you? And the kids will say, oh, well, I was with the wolf man or the bear man. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? And they'll describe things like the bear man took me to the berry bushes and set me there, and he wouldn't let me leave this circle. And then, later the bear man will let them leave. So it's really strange how that pops up in a lot of these cases.
Do you think that is related to when the Key family was looking for bears?
Yeah, the interesting thing there is that Paulides actually went and talked to Dennis Martin's dad before he passed away. He passed away 3 years ago. He knocked on the door. A guy had the same address, same phone number like he did 40 years before. It's like these people don't move on when they lose a loved one, Right. Like they think any moment the loved one's going to come back, so they don't want to change their address or their phone numbers or anything. And, Mr. Martin said his life had been ruined by this, and that he promised his wife he wouldn't talk about it anymore. But Paulides was like, I know all this stuff about the case, and which shows that he really cared. And he even knew about the Key family. The Key family evidence was even kept out of Knoxville newspapers, right? That's super secret shit right there. And so he talked to him, and he's like, tell me anything about this case that you know, Mr. Martin. And Mr. Martin said that his ranger buddy told him they had a problem with wild men in the park, but at the south side. And these are basically like woods hobos. And that's what that ranger thought happened, that one of these hobos, took the kid. But, most of those people that are ruining their health are not in good enough health to grab a kid and run off a mountain, all the way down to the bottom in 2 hours. That's the problem with that.
To do it without being detected as well.
Right. Most of these cases, the reason why your mind goes to abductor is because the window in which they go missing is so short, right? There's the Trini Gibson case and Thelma. Let me remember Thelma. These are the three big cases in the Smoky Mountains. Yeah, Trini Lynn Gibson went missing in 1976. She was just 16. She was on a trip with all these troubled youth. They were taking them out to the AT to walk a section of it, and they were taking their sweet-ass time about it. Like, they'd stop periodically and gossip. And then there were several clumps of people moving along the trail, and people would move between clumps to talk to their friends. And one of the clumps sat down to drink some water and gossip, and then she left, went ahead, and disappeared off the trail. Right, so there's such a narrow window for her to go missing, and the last place she was seen is just this washout high on a mountain, right? So the sheriff thought that she had ran off the trail, went back to the parking lot, and jumped in her boyfriend's car, right? So they thought that she had escaped with her boyfriend, and it's like he had nothing to do with it, and that ruined a lot of time. Right? If you don't get right on the search and rescue, you're probably never going to find these people alive. Right.
They set up with the like the search and rescue grid. That's how they actually like do the searches via like a grid setup. I've actually heard. I was reading one about the Keith Parkins kid who Umatilla National Forest. He was found 12 miles away after being gone for only 19 hours. So basically, he would have had to have crossed two mountain ranges, fences, and a river So
Right, that's the crow flies. Yeah.
right. So he was found. What they said that he was found like several 100% outside of the grid system. So I mean that's crazy. So a 2-year-old kid traveled 12 miles in 19 hours.
Yeah, there's just no way
And
they
they
can
still
do it.
found him.
Yeah, and they found him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's happened several times. One of them, Paulides talked to one of them who had happened to him when he was a kid. He's found like 15 miles away, face down in a creek, almost dead, right? And the big question there is, how did search and rescue know to look out there? Because that's way outside the grid pattern. It's almost like they had some sort of knowledge, And then when they did find him, well, this guy has no memory of it. He depends upon other people, his mother, his relatives, to tell him what happened. No memory whatsoever.
Yeah, that happens a lot too. The whole memory loss thing. People who show up alive again just have no memory of what happened at all. Like they could not tell you.
Yeah, Trini's never been found. Give me a second. Let's see. Thelma Pauline Melton is the third, and she's a 58-year-old. She was doing like motor camping with some of her old girlfriends, and they like to go up to the Smoky Mountains, park their campers in a particular place, and then just go on light hikes. She literally just went over a rise because she was trying to get back to her camper because she was tired. That's also very common. These people will be like, I'm tired, I don't feel well, and then they'll disappear. But like Johnny was saying, search and rescue is down to such a science. The lack of evidence, the lack of finding them is amazing, right? It's like, let's say they're sick and they wander off the trail. Well, they're not going to get very far. Search and rescue will find them. This woman literally went over a rise in the trail, disappeared. The only thing is a dry creek bed that was nearby. That's the only way she could have, gotten out of there.
It's funny you mention that because there are so many of these cases where creek beds are involved somehow, dry creek beds or creeks. People tend to disappear around them. I think there was one of the talks that Paulides did where he said that basically all of these disappearances take place within like 100 miles of a major body of water, whether that's the oceans or the Great Lakes or something like that. They all take place near water for whatever reason.
Yeah, I was looking at the map of the. I was looking at the map of the clusters. I guess was there 28 in the United States that he has, something like
There's
that.
over 50.
Is it 50? It's more than 15. All right, I'm looking at. Then it's an old map, but they're all like near the Great Lakes or near the coast or on the Mississippi or on the Colorado
There's
River.
virtually none. If you look at the clusters, like if you cut the United States in half, like drew a line right down the middle, there's virtually no disappearances there. Like Colorado, Missouri, that kind of area, there's almost nothing.
Through the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, all the way down into. I can't tell on this map, but if that's actually in Oklahoma or if that's in Arkansas. But the line down the middle from North Dakota all the way down to Texas, 0 in Texas. Boom. All those states, not a single disappearance.
If you're looking at that map, another interesting thing is if you look on the left where Yosemite is, there's like a circle. I don't know if you can see that on the map you're looking at, but there's a circle, and inside there's virtually no disappearances. But on like the circumference of the circle, there's all these clusters for whatever reason. It's just weird the patterns it takes.
It reminds me of the Bermuda Triangle, but like inverted.
Yeah, Yosemite is actually the number one place in the world where people go missing in this fashion. Yeah, and it's counterintuitive because Yosemite's got a lot of exposed granite, right? So and big wide trails, and it's highly populated with hikers. So you would think that people would go missing in the obscure parts where there's hardly anyone there. Why would you go missing in like one of the most frequented parks in the country?
There was one. Well, I mean, I guess someone who's skeptical could argue that, that's like saying why do more people die in big cities? Well, there's more people. But there are still strange things. Like there was one case I remember reading about. It took place in, I think it was Yosemite. It took place in a parking lot, though. The husband and wife did their camping trip. He went to go. They were getting ready to go in the car and leave. The husband just wanted a couple more pictures. So he walks around this big boulder in the parking lot and disappears. And he's never heard from again. No, that's not a trail. That's not the backcountry. You know, that's a parking lot. Like, how do you
Right.
disappear from a parking lot? It defies explanation.
And that's different than like dad going out to buy a pack of cigarettes and never coming home either. So
No, it's literally I'm gonna go to the other side of that boulder to take some pictures. Oh, I'm gone forever. How does
yeah, that
happen?
doesn't make any sense. And a lot of the disappearances happen like that. Like Musonius, you said, like they were just seen seconds before, and then poof, gone.
Right, the window of the disappearance is so thin. You know what my mind is drawn to is because I've heard some of these cases. Is did you say there was a boulder?
Yeah, and I know you. That's another thing that pops up a lot. Is it always seems to happen around boulders or granite or rock formations.
Yeah, beware boulder fields. Boulder fields, you know, the sign, when you go through all these cases, it's like you'll hear the same things over and over again. They went berry picking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were in a boulder field. There was a dry creek bed nearby.
Mm-hmm.
The weather, the sky opened up and rained for 3 days, you know, or 3 weeks straight after they went missing.
That's another really strange one that always seems to happen is either at the moment they go missing or right after or around that time, there's always these freak weather incidences where nobody saw it coming. Nobody thought there was going to be thunderstorms. It just happens for whatever reason.
Statistically, we would expect more people to not be found, you know, during bad weather. So I guess there would be a correlation between bad weather and not being found. That's correct. I mean,
That's
just throwing that out
after,
there.
right?
Yeah, it's after, which almost means that. Well, I mean, it could be a statistical artifact, you know, like Scott was talking about earlier. It's like it just so happens that the people that go missing before the weather changes, you know, they're never going to be found, which is what you would expect because search and rescue is hampered. But, you know, the implication is, well, it could also be, you know how animals can tell that the weather is about to change?
Mm-hmm.
It could be predatory behavior where the predators or the abductors, whatever, you know, understand that this is the time to hunt. You know, right before the weather changes.
Interesting. So, is there a specific group of people that it happens to more? Like, is it, you know, adults, kids, old? Yeah, you know.
It seems like it happens to more men than women. I think.
Yeah, Pauly said that more men are in the wilderness, so he can't really get anything out of that. But it happens to the very old, the very young, mentally challenged, and interestingly enough, the super gifted. He's got a long list of scientists that have gone missing like this.
Oh yeah, like PhD level scientists who, you know, they aren't stupid people. Like you would think they would have some idea to sit down if they go missing and wait for help, but they just disappear. Another group of people that tend to disappear are the really athletic people who run marathons, people who do like long distance biking, things like that. They'll disappear as well. And they're people who know the area. They've been on these trails dozens, hundreds of times before. And then one time they just disappear for whatever reason. So it's not like these are all inexperienced people who don't know what they're doing.
Right. He also noticed a correlation with German last names. He just kept hearing German last names over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely happens to a lot more white people than anything else for whatever reason.
Well,
White people go out in the woods more
No.
than.
non-white
true.
folk would.
That could, yeah, that
Now,
could be
it could
another
be, if it's all these
statistical
Germans, could be the Starians are just retrieving people that, you know,
Hold on, the who?
are going to come back to the space Nazi. You know, it's like Aryan plus star Aryan.
Oh, the Starians. Okay.
I was just making a jab at the Antarctica. It's awesome.
Maybe
No, that's-
Yellowstone leads to Hollow Earth, and they're like,
Maybe that's what.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Yeah, I want to
No,
do.
the space Nazis are just...
The space Nazis are what's doing it. Well, the German thing. I don't know. Does it happen in Europe at all, or is it mostly here?
we can talk about that as well. I don't want to like give away the ending of what I think it is, but yeah, it does happen in Europe.
No, because there's
especially-
still like another hour and a half of the show. You can't give it away yet.
Yeah, I know. I can't do that yet. But it does actually happen. I think in the UK it happens a lot, which is really strange. because the United Kingdom doesn't have any predators. Like, there are no wolves, there are no snakes. I don't think anything in nature in the United Kingdom can actually hurt you.
Pakistanis.
Yet these people still, well, Pakistanis, yeah. I mean, the imported wildlife might, but the native wildlife.
There's no native wildlife. Was there ever any native wildlife on Great Britain that
yeah,
was...
there used to be wolves like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, look up Irish elks. They're amazing.
Oh, those are those real big ones, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like a 6-foot man comes up to their front shoulder, you know, and then their racks are like, you know, they look like moose racks, but they're like 7 feet wide.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But yeah, there are actually cases of people disappearing from the 17 and 1800s, and a lot of those happen in the United Kingdom.
Huh.
Yeah,
elsewhere. I'm not familiar with all of the missing people cases.
So
Well,
you guys said something about... Oh, go ahead, Misani. Finish.
Oh no, Johnny, go ask.
I was gonna say, you guys said sometimes physically disabled people are disappeared. So you're talking like people who probably couldn't go anywhere, really.
They can't leave the trail because they're in a wheelchair. You know, it's not.
And then they're just gone, wheelchair and all.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. You could say, okay, you know, the 2-year-old's not likely to run over a mountain, but hey, maybe they could do it. But there are people who are just physically disabled who cannot travel in the wilderness whatsoever, and they still disappear. There was one case I remember. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, what are they doing there in the first place? Like out in the woods?
Just enjoying it, I guess.
I guess, yeah. So you're saying like
not
somebody,
alone, right?
Somebody brought like,
they're
yeah,
not
their parents
alone.
brought like a guy in a wheelchair or whatever, or there's a group.
Yeah,
with
and
it.
then
yeah, okay.
He's parked on the trail while they go look at something and come back and he's gone or whatever. There was one case I remember. It was a physically disabled guy. He was some sort of archaeologist or something along those lines. He went to, I think this was in Colorado, but I could be wrong. He went to like a dig site type of thing, and his friend brought him there. His friend carried all his tools because the tools are heavy, and you know the guy has whatever's wrong with him. His friend leaves him there for about 20 minutes while he's digging. He comes back and just everything is gone. The tools are gone. The guy's gone. They never see him again. And this is a guy who can't just get up and walk away, and he can't carry the tools with him either. I mean, he can like sit down and do it, but he can't pack 50 pounds of gear and just wander off. It's not possible.
That is really spooky.
Yeah, I think we need to emphasize just the inexplicability of where these people went. Like Mount Rainier, there was a bunch of guys that were like fit, like military pilots, mountaineers, and they went up Mount Rainier, which is a well-traveled path that goes up to like the base, the climbing base. And then you can come back down without having to climb it anymore. But one of them started to have altitude sickness, and he said he was going to leave early. They camped on the side of the trail, and he was going to go up to that base camp. And there's a ranger up there, a full-time ranger, and he never arrived. When the rest of his party got there, they're like, "Where is he?" And so they actually put rangers down in helicopters on top of the mountain, came off every side of the mountain, and couldn't find him anywhere. Right, like his car was still in the parking lot. He didn't go anywhere. He disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah, that's another thing about this is just they just vanish. Like there is nowhere for them to have gone.
It really
like,
gets
if
me.
you're on a mountaintop and you look around you and you don't see a person, where did they go?
Yeah, especially with the wheelchair and the tools and stuff. Like they, whatever did it. Taking it too, like why would they take that?
Right, I don't know.
There was a case in the 1950s up in Yellowstone, and a family went with their teenage son who was going to college at Berkeley, and he actually sat down in a boulder field to take a stone out of his boot, and then they kept walking, and then he never caught up. They went back, and he's gone. All they found was a sock in that boulder field. 2 weeks later, another young man from Berkeley that was going to Berkeley disappeared in the same park. And these families looking for their young men actually ran into each other because the Ranger Service didn't tell them that, this just happened 2 weeks ago, right? And then they both wrote a letter to President Eisenhower asking for more resources to look for these men. So that's what I mean by going missing in a boulder field. And there's something called paradoxical undressing, where people, when they're close to the end of hypothermia, their core actually gets cold, and that makes their skin seem warm, right? So they start taking off their clothing, but they're in a stupor when they do this, right? And what Paulides is showing is that clothing starts coming off close to where they went missing, which is counterintuitive, right? This is not paradoxical undressing. This is someone losing a sock basically where he got lost, right? Or when you do find them, you'll find their clothing like folded, right? Well, you're not going to fold clothing when you're in a stupor about to die.
Yeah, that's another thing that is often described is their clothing. Not only will it be found folded, but sometimes it will look as if they were wearing it and they disappeared. Like, imagine like the like the Left Behind movies or whatever, like that. Like they got raptured basically. Imagine they're just standing there and they disappear and their clothing just drops where it is. And the socks are still in the shoes and the pants have, kind of bunched up over the shoes and the shirt's on top of that. And what happened? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Or another time, or sorry, go ahead.
No, go, Scott.
Oh, another thing that will happen is they'll disappear and they'll never be seen again, but their clothing will show up weeks or months later, and it will look like it has not been weathered at all. If I take a shirt and I throw it outside for 3 months, it's going to look like shit. It's going to be, half eaten and dirty and all this, but it'll be bright and clean, and it looks like it just was placed there. There are cases where people's shoes will be found on the side of a cliff, like in a crevice on a cliffside, hundreds of feet up. There's no possible way a missing kid can like take his shoe off and climb a cliff and stick it in there and disappear. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah, Paulides has made he's good friends with Adidero. I want to say his name was Joseph Adidero, but he was this 3-year-old that went missing, and Paulides went to talk to his father about what happened that day. And what happened was his father had like a nice area where these Christian singles groups would come up and hang out, and they some sort of resort and camping resort. And then this group of Christian singles wanted to go to this fish hatchery that was up the road, and his little boy asked if he could go, and he said, if they watch after you, right? Because there's all these Christian girls of babysitting age and all this, And then they went up there, but unbeknownst to the father, they decided to hike this trail a little bit. It was up near the fish hatchery, and they let the boy get away, probably because they were too distracted hitting on each other. And the boy actually just ran up the trail, ran into 2 old men that were fishing. And they said, "Get out of here, boy! You're scaring the fish," because he was hitting the water with a stick. And then he took off, and they never saw him alive again. Years later, they found his clothing, bright, vivid clothing, looks like it was brand new, up on this mountain. And you had to climb like a sheer cliff to get up there. And there were no mountain lion signs. It's they found his skull fragments and all this other stuff, but they didn't see any signs of violence. So why is a lot of these cases? It looks like,
where do they find the skull fragments?
Up near his clothing on top of this mountain. But the reason why the search and rescue didn't find him is because this mountain is a sheer cliff. I mean, you gotta climb it.
You need gear to climb something like that too. It's not something you can just climb by yourself.
Well,
right?
Paulides did it with his son. His son plays hockey, and he's in great shape.
Okay.
And Paulides is in great shape. So they did manage to do it, but there's no way that a little kid with his stubby legs is going to do it. Which is why sometimes you'll hear the parents in these cases say, "Did an eagle get my son?" Right. There's no way an eagle can, carry something. A modern day eagle could carry a child like this. Maybe
one of those giant California condors could fly away with a 2-year-old, but that's not.
But then they said there was no signs of violence. The clothes were fine. It's not like an
exactly. Yeah, the clothes were all fine. The kid had taken it off and folded it nice and neatly and left it there. It's crazy.
Yeah, his shoes were still vivid. They looked like they had just been bought, right? And his shirt had no tear marks on it. No mountain lion, no pecking, which is what you'd expect from a predator.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that pops up in a lot of these cases is the clothing that people wear when they disappear is often vivid, bright colors. For whatever reason, they'll have like a bright red shirt on, or they'll have, like light up shoes or something like that. And it's just something that kind of has popped up over these cases is people just have.
See, that makes me think of something like that's not very smart, but like just sees something that catches its attention and wants to go investigate. But if all the, something that dumb wouldn't know to fold, wouldn't be able to fold the clothes.
Also, how would something like that, I mean, I guess you don't need a lot of intelligence to know to isolate something from the group, but it's still strange. You would think, okay, let's say it's a bear, right? Bears are smart enough to hunt, but if they're going to come and like run up and snatch a kid because he has bright clothing on, someone's going to see it or someone's going to hear it, but they just disappear. That's what's so strange about it.
Yeah, you're right. There's going to be blood on that clothing.
Mm-hmm.
This has happened, several times, and there's one particular case that sort of haunts me, and it was this family up in Idaho. Like the father went up there for a convention, and then while staying at the hotel, the mother, took the two little kids up this like little logging trail that was no longer used because the hotel told them there was a spectacular waterfall 2 miles up the logging trail. Right, so she took her kids up there, and the little boy that's like 3, was good and angry by the time he got up there. He was tired, and he didn't want to see the waterfall. He was throwing a fit. So she sat him down on this rock, went off the logging trail like a few yards with the youngest one to show the waterfall, came back to the rock, and he's gone. Well, they put search and rescue all over that mountain. And the dogs, that's another instance where, the dogs are on a trail and then they sit down, right? They went up the logging trail away from the hotel, went about a mile and stopped at a crossroads and refused to do any more searching.
Oh,
and
that kind
dogs
of
being spooked. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So that kind of indicates that the dogs are either spooked or there's no more scent.
Oh, yeah, there's no more scent. I mean, the father in that case said, it's like my boy climbed a tree and just kept going. Right,
That's
because
creepy.
they went out in a radius, and, there's only so far a kid on his stubby legs can go. 98% of the time, he's going to be within 1.5 miles of where he went missing.
The thing about the dogs, too, is these dogs are very well trained. Bloodhounds are the only animal who is admissible in court as evidence. Bloodhounds can testify in court, basically. No other animal can do that. So these dogs are actually no. I'm not even.
No,
joking.
I believe you.
It's
It's
actually
just it's just funny because they're they're bloodhounds.
they're not very.
Conjures up droopy dog cartoons and stuff.
They're not very smart dogs. The thing about bloodhounds and hounds, they're not very smart dogs, but they're very, very good at tracking. They can track someone across a parking lot. Like, that's how good they are. They can follow you and follow your scent across a parking lot, like hours after you have gone through. They're that good at tracking. So for them to just lose the scent just doesn't make any sense. For them to suddenly stop like that also doesn't make any sense. I had a basset hound, and they're about the most food-oriented dogs you can imagine. They will do anything for food. I have to imagine that bloodhounds are probably much the same way. And that's how they train them. They, if you find the person or whatever, you get a treat, and they love treats. They love finding people. Like, that's their job. And for them to just refuse to do their job is so out of the ordinary that it defies explanation.
Yeah, I've heard it said that if a bloodhound's olfactory sense is like, it's almost like they can see molecules in 3 dimensions. We're talking about that level of detail when it comes to scent.
Right. Did you say they can? What did you say they can? What? Say that last part again.
Oh, it's almost like, to describe their scents, it's almost like they can see each scent molecule in 3 dimensions, and describe their texture. That's the level of scentability that they have.
It's crazy.
To try to describe it to human beings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they're like highly sensitive, highly precise.
Yeah, it's almost preternatural. I mean, like tracking someone across a parking lot. Think of how few scent molecules would be left there, and they would be on concrete.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of the Douglas Legg case. It's a similar case to Dennis Martin, but it happened up in the Adirondacks of New York. His grandfather was super rich and had a cabin next to Lake Placid, a big hunting cabin, and he was going to go hiking with his 4-year-old son. His son showed up and wasn't wearing long pants, and he's like, "Well, there's poison ivy. You better go get some long pants on. Go back up to the cabin." And so the kid walked up the trail next to the lake where other kids were playing, and they saw him. He went behind a clump of trees at the base of the trail as it's about to go up a hill to the cabin, and he disappears. Right. Well, the grandfather's like, "I'm rich," so he had bloodhounds brought in on private jet from California, and then he told his senator and governor buddy, help me. Right, so they got everyone on that freaking mountain, next to Lake Placid, looking for this kid, and the scent went across the road and up a hill, right? And then they all started climbing the hill with these dogs, and they're getting worn out. And that's another case where Green Berets were brought in and kept their own counsel, right? So Green Berets are searching around the mountains, and then the hunting party with the private dogs are going up the mountain, and then they start going in a ring around the local town on these mountaintops. From mountaintop to mountaintop, the dogs are chasing the whole way, and then they get to a swampy area at the base of a mountain, and the dogs sit down. They lost the scent. That kid was never found. And the FBI agent that was over the case, just like the Dennis Martin case, he was over all these missing cases in Appalachia. Pennsylvania is like a cluster to itself, by the way. Nothing compares to Pennsylvania, all the kids that went missing in the 50s. Right.
Yeah, that's the strange thing about Pennsylvania is it also all took place over a short period of time as well.
So it's clustered in geography and in time?
Sometimes.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is.
There are clusters in time, yeah.
Yeah, that FBI agent killed himself. Right, that was one of the things that Paulides found out from Mr. Martin.
Was he like one of the investigators and he just blew his brains out because he couldn't figure it out kind of a thing?
Yeah, we don't know if he was haunted. But we don't know why. Okay. Does he know more than, he let on?
What did he know and haunted?
Yeah, in his memories.
No.
We're talking about hundreds of missing kids,
Sorry, I
that
thought
he's
you
in
just
charge
brought
of.
up like a ghost.
No, I'm sorry. But the cases keep coming. Stacey Arris is a case of Yosemite, and this is an example of the inexplicability of a Yosemite disappearance. She was 14. It was the early 70s. She went up on horseback with her father in this big group that were all going on horseback to these 6 log cabins that are out in the middle of nowhere, but they're kind of kept up, right? And she gets out there, and there's an elderly man that she wants to go and get some pictures off the cliff of the whole valley that's just right up the trail. And this elderly man said, "I'll go with you." Well, he gets up the trail, and he's like, "I'm tired as fuck. I'm old." All right, he sits down on a stump, and he's like, "All right, Stacy, you go ahead." Stacy went through the trees and disappeared. Well, everyone got up there, ran through the trees and to the cliff, and there's nowhere for her to go. There's a thin line of trees, and then there's the cliff. Well, search and rescue looked underneath, at the bottom of the cliff, looked all around. The only thing that was ever found of Stacy was her lens cap on her camera. She was gone.
I thought she disappeared near a lake. Am I remembering the wrong one?
No, she's overlooking a lake on a cliff, but it was actually... Yeah, up on a cliff. That case, Paulides, if he spoon feeds the Park Service, he can usually get these files. Now, keep in mind, they do not keep missing people records like every other single sheriff's department in the country. They do.
Yeah, I heard
they do not.
That there's an issue with the National Park Service people. Like they don't like working with him at all, or something like that. I read something about like there was.
They just they refuse to give information out. They'll give you the facts of a specific case if you ask for that by name, But if you say, hey, can I get all the people who disappeared from X date to Y date at this place, they just won't do it.
Yeah, they'll say that if you got $30 million, I'll tell you. You know,
right? Yeah, because the Freedom of Information Act somehow they need money for that or something. It's a very strange reaction that they have when they're asked.
Yeah,
interesting.
He does FOIA requests, and he is spoon-fed the Stacey Harris case, which he only knew about it because he was living like a county over when it happened, and he remembered. You know, and then a park ranger named Ute, and a park investigator, excuse me, was like, no way you're ever going to get it. And he even got a congressman to help him with the FOIA request, and they told the congressman, no way you're ever going to get Stacey either, right? So that, I mean, this is a case where they're hiding it doubly good for some reason.
Yeah, I think that's the strangest thing about this is you would think that the park services would be more than willing to try to find these people, but they're not. They refuse.
And then, like, you know, if they had something to do with it, why would evidence of clothes and stuff?
I think also I don't think it's that they have something to do with it. I don't think they're grabbing these people, but I think maybe a lot of it is just they don't want to scare people away from the parks. Because if you have documented evidence that, oh, hey, you know, 120 people or whatever last year went missing in Yosemite and we only found, 60 of them, like, that's going to put me off from visiting Yosemite. And doing the research on all these really makes you not want to ever go to the woods again. Like, it scares the shit out of me. So I imagine it would have that effect on other people too. So I think that might be the reason behind a lot of their refusal to cooperate. But who knows? I don't know why.
Yeah, Paulides. What's funny about it's really strange because he has to do FOIA requests, and they basically if he feeds them all the information, they'll give him a file. Sometimes but sometimes they won't. I mean, there was a case where a park ranger. I think there's been 3 cases where park rangers have gone missing, and they decided to give him everything on the most mysterious one. So it really sounds sort of inexplicable who they choose to give information out on. And he'll tell you it's like he's never worked a case where someone was with other people, had a firearm, and had a transponder, right? If you're with someone else, you have a firearm, and you have a transponder, well, then he's never worked a case like that. He has worked cases where people had a transponder. He has worked cases where hunters went missing with firearms.
Is a transponder like a communication video?
It's like a GPS. Yeah. Like it pings so they can find you.
Yeah. Basically, it's a little device that pings up to a satellite, and if it's on, it's always pinging.
Oh, like a smartphone.
Yeah, but better, basically.
Yeah, but better. Like they have them. Yeah, people that do like backcountry snowboarding and skiing, they have them built into their jackets in case there's an avalanche. They can find them, kind of a thing.
Okay.
It's just a way of locating. You've seen in the movies where they're doing they got the little radar thing. It's like beep beep beep, and they can find it. That's what it is. That's the transponder, is the part that you're tracking.
So just it was if they had in a group with a firearm and a transponder, is there like with a group and a firearm and with a group and a transponder, and there's cases like that, or is that
there's plenty of cases where people go missing with that are in a group. And, don't be first in line, don't be last in line, basically. People get away from the group, and they just disappear. Like Thelma that I told you about down in the Smoky Mountains. She was in a group. So was Trini Gibson.
Also, I know people in a group with firearms will sometimes disappear as well, because there's cases of hunters who, say, 3 or 4 guys go out there, and one of them just kind of disappears. He gets separated, and they can't find him anymore.
Yeah, so having all 3, I think, is interesting. I mean, there's times where the people have gone missing with transponders, and they were found dead, but they were found on the other side of a river, right? And people are like, well, how did he get to the other side of the river? They would have never found him if it weren't for the transponder. Never.
It makes you wonder how many of these cases where people vanish, they just happen to reappear or whatever outside of the search radius. how many people actually vanished into thin air? How many people showed up later outside the search radius for whatever reason? That reminds me also, one of the weird things about when they find these people is sometimes they will find them in areas that they have searched dozens or even hundreds of times before. I know Johnny mentioned the grid system earlier. That's how they do the searches. They'll take a map, they'll lay it into grids, and they'll just go grid by grid so they can get as thorough as possible. And these people, I mean, almost literally are turning over pebbles. Like, that's how much they are looking at the ground and how much they're searching when they do these grids. And it's not like you can just lay on the ground and not be seen by these people. They're staring at the ground. They're sweeping the area. But sometimes, weeks after they do these searches, someone will reappear in an area they've searched hundreds of times before. They'll reappear, say, laying on a log in the middle of the trail.
I was just going to say, wasn't there one that there was a log that was there for 12 days or whatever, and then on the 12th day there was a body?
There's some like that, and there's some where the log wasn't there until the person was laying on top of it.
Oh, really?
Like someone, yeah, it was just a clear trail. One day they walk up the trail to go to the search area, and a tree will have fallen over onto the trail, and there's the body.
Do the bodies often, they're just like more or less preserved, no tears, wounds, things like that?
I think so. I'm not totally sure, but I don't think that these bodies show any signs of like violence, like no bite marks from cougars or anything like that.
Yeah, you got to.
Sometimes when they sorry, go ahead.
Do they do autopsies and stuff?
Yes, I might be remembering this wrong, but I think there's a couple cases where they have found food in their stomach, like berries and such, after they found the body. And this is weeks later, and the body has been dead for, say, 2 days. So they've been alive, but no one has any idea where the heck they were. And then they show up, and they're dead, and they have berries in their stomach.
Yeah, well, before we concentrate on this too much, Paulides has gone into those young men that go missing in cities late at night, and they show up in water, because missing 411 in particular are people that go missing around parks. And he did one book for like the western half of the U.S., one book for the eastern half. And then he did another one called Devil in the Details, because some of these people go missing at places called Devil's Nest, Devil's Point, right? They go missing in places that have strange names, supernatural names. And then, but he has done one called A Sobering Coincidence about young men who disappear while walking home from bars. And it sounds like, well, duh, they got drunk and wandered into a river or something. And it's like, well, no, I mean, homeless people don't wander into these rivers, and they're drunk all the time, And then when you find their bodies, it's like, according to, the coroner, they weren't in the water as long as you think they were. You find them 3 weeks later, well, they were only in the water for 3 days.
A lot of times these people who go missing in the cities, they fit certain profiles as well. It's typically young athletic men who disappear for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, they had a cadet. Canada has a military academy. They had a cadet go missing from there that was one of these guys. So they're in top physical, peak performance. These young men that go missing from bars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they get ambushed by a homeless guy and like cracked in the head and robbed and then left to die. I don't know what to call it. It seems much more sinister.
It's just like they just disappear. And I was reading that they said some of the bodies are actually found like as if they have just died, even though they've been gone for however long or dead for 2-3 weeks. Yeah.
Some of these people are found dead standing up in the water too, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong on that detail, but I thought that was just something that was a little
standing up in the water.
Well. Yeah, so like their heads sticking out of the water, but that's it. Like they're in neck deep water, and I don't know. I might be remembering that wrong, but I seem to remember that being a detail of some of these cases.
I think the water would carry them away.
Yeah, the cases that I've seen, I mean, some of them are very creepy. because there was a case where a guy got done with a baseball game, and he was waiting out next to the stadium, and literally, like, his wife was a mile away, and he was telling her where he was at. She gets there, he's gone. He ends up in the water, being found in the water, like, a couple weeks later. So, I mean, in that short period of time, he ended up in the water dead.
Do you remember a case where someone was on the phone like that, and the person there on the phone was like, "Oh, I'm at the intersection of, whatever the street is, like West and 6. Where are you?" And they're like, "I'm right there. I don't see you." Do you recall that case?
Yeah, there was I want to say a linebacker, some professional football player that he died. He was fishing on this river that had several, like, bridges and roads that went across it. And he was telling his wife that someone was after him. And they sent out a search party, and they found him. I mean, he was dead next to the river. But, he died of, quote-unquote, exposure, and they blame all the concussions he got from the NFL. For his neurological problems. So
yeah, and sometimes people on the phone will be talking, and there's like a sound of like whooshing air, and they'll scream, and then the phone line just cuts out.
There's a freaky one where this he was some sort of politician, a black politician, but he actually phoned in while he was dying, and you hear him like saying, "Stop it, no." And he ends up in a pond dead, and there's no mud on his socks, before he got into the pond, and it's surrounded by mud. Yeah,
it's getting really spooky there.
It really is. It really.
So let's save some. Yeah, we're coming up on the end of the first hour, and I'm getting a little creeped out now because it's pretty spooky. When we take a little bit of a break, we got a song that was sent to us via the email. Nicholas, who donated to us this week, also sent us a song. It's apparently another one of our Fashwave type guys. This guy goes by the name of Recoil, and this is Haunted House Boogie. So we're going to listen to this, and we'll be back. All right, everybody, we're back. Welcome back to the Paranormies Present the Undeniable Hour. I am still Johnny Monoxide with Scott Taylor, Adam Haight, and Misonius Rufus. We are talking about Missing 411. There's a lot of freaky stories involved in that, man. Like people just literally disappearing.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time just wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's do you guys think it's weird because I mean that's not just, you know, like it's people go missing, like how many people go missing every year, but like what makes these particular cases special, maybe? Or is it because they're around the clusters, or is it just because they're mostly national parks? I mean, what makes these missing people like creepy, spooky, and not just your average, you know, missing?
I think it's the inexplicability of it, because most people are going to be found unless you go missing next to a highway, and he excluded those cases. You know, if you go missing next to a highway, what probably happened is someone abducted you, put you in a car, and you could be anywhere, you know? But if you go missing out in a park, well, let's think about this. If you're a 150-pound man and you're carrying a 50-pound pack, who's going to carry you off? Right? I mean, who can actually do that? You know, and if you go missing, it's like, well, how far can you get? How far can a toddler get?
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's the thing for me that makes it so fascinating is the lack of explanation. Like, you can rack your. Oh, I was just gonna say, I've been reading about this for a few months, and nothing really makes sense as far as what could be causing this. Like, you almost have to go outside the normal and the natural to figure out what the heck it could be, because I don't know what it could be.
So
yeah, that's what gets me is like they find the body with no signs of violence. They find food. They find the clothes all folded up. Like, that's obviously not any kind of regular animal would know how to fold clothes, or even what folding was. How rapidly, like the tiny window that they disappear in, the odd silence from park rangers.
Yeah, I mean, that's really creepy and doesn't seem to me like it's their normal abductions either. I was just asking what you guys thought.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, what these cases and you know, a statistician, you know, a logical person will say, well, they've been cherry picked. I mean, there's no guarantee that the same thing happened to every one of these people. It could be several different causes, you know. But what these cases are telling us is that there's either an abductor in the woods, there's something about human nature we don't understand, or there's something about nature we don't understand. So, like the human nature aspect, let's go to, you know, abductor, I think is pretty obvious. You know, we're talking about serial killers or Sasquatch, you know, a cryptozoology creature or something like that. And then B, there's something about human nature we don't understand. Why, you know, can someone, you know, suddenly, you know, travel over 2 mountain ranges, jump a bunch of fences, do it in a stupor where they won't remember, you know, take off their clothes and fold them? I mean, it's possible these people are just running off. And there's a lot of inexplicable behavior that we don't understand. But that would be something we don't understand about. It's like paradoxical undressing is mostly a wives' tale. Now, coroners tell us that it does happen, right? But we're talking about someone taking off their clothing and just throwing it. We're not talking about folding clothing. And it's certainly something that mountain climbers don't do, right? It has to be someone that's in a stupor that suddenly feels hot and is not in their right minds. So they're taking off clothing when there's snow on the ground or something. And then there being something about nature we don't understand. Well, you start getting into dimensions, portals, that sort of thing. Or there's you know, quartz in the rock that disorients us or something. You know. But that's what we're talking about, because there's no good answer.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't have to be the same thing for each one of these cases. Like, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that some people go missing due to one factor and some people go missing due to another factor. You know, maybe Bigfoot snatched some of them. It's possible. Maybe some people just enter a weird fugue state and just wander off. So I think if you're looking for one specific answer, you're probably not going to find it. But the strange thing to me is it's almost like there are no explanations. Like, it's not a case of multiple explanations and we don't know which one it is. It's like, what could it possibly be? There are no explanations.
Yeah, there's something we don't understand. There's no explanation for any of these, really.
When I was reading up for this topic, I found there's a Missing 411 page on Reddit, and there's a lot of people who post their experiences about how they think that they might have actually been a close call, or whatever you want to call it, who may have almost disappeared, but they lucked out and didn't disappear. And a lot of them describe the same thing. They'll be out in the woods or wherever. They'll be in a familiar spot where they've been hundreds of times before, and suddenly it's like someone flips a switch and they have no idea where they're at. They don't recognize their surroundings. They don't know what to do. And this happens, I guess it happens a lot because there are multiple experiences on here that people are talking about.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about altered states in the woods. Like, I think most people that are woodsmen have had that moment where everything goes quiet, and your instinct is simply to wait until the noise comes back. It's like the whole forest goes quiet. It's like something moved into the area, right?
That was another thing that is common with these near misses, is they'll be describing how as all this happens, they notice there's nothing as far as sound goes. Absolutely nothing. You can't hear the wind. You can't hear the creak you heard 2 seconds before. There's no insects, birds, nothing. It's like somebody just pulled the plug on all the sound.
And there's some anecdotal tales about near misses where, there's someone following them. Someone is peeking around the trees, and then the father of the family is like, let's get out of here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they'll see something, or there's been a couple. I don't know how much credence I want to put into it, but I mean, anything's possible. There are some where people just felt like there was something standing on the trail. Like they didn't see anything, but they just felt it, and they could just visualize it as strongly as they would if they could actually see it. And they'll describe, like, there was an angry man on the trail who I couldn't see, but I knew was there, and I knew he couldn't catch me or I would just be dead. So that's another thing that a lot of these near misses talk about. There was one specifically I remember where somebody saw they were out hunting with their dad and their brother, I think. And basically what happened is they entered that state where they didn't know where they were. So they tried to find their way back to the car. And they heard rustling behind them. And they looked and they saw the grass moving. But they didn't actually see anything there. And this was fairly high grass. It was like 2 or 3 feet tall. So like, what is that? And they just got this weird foreboding feeling. And they started running the other way. And they encountered a giant wall, like a hedge of thorn bushes. And at first they're like, oh, I can't go this way, I have to turn around. But they got this feeling that if I turn around and I go back the other way, I'm going to die. So they basically ran through the thorn bushes, and as soon as they pop out the other side, they recognize where they are. They say, oh, I'm here. They turn around, there's no thorn bushes, and they go back to the car, and they're fine. So I have to wonder if it's some sort of supra-dimensional type thing, maybe. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. The cases that you're talking about, I don't know what to call them. It's almost like dream time or something, where you look up and the forest suddenly isn't recognizable. It's like you're in a different forest or something. I've heard of cases like that. I don't know what to call them.
I don't know. It's the funny thing about it is that, to me, the other explanations are so implausible that it almost makes more sense to say they were, somehow plucked from our dimension into some parallel dimension or whatever you want to call it. That almost makes more sense to me than anything else as far as fitting the facts of the case.
Yeah, you're right. Now, some of these cases most certainly are abduction. And if we're talking about portals or something like that, then we're talking about predatory portals, because I mean there are cases where the toddler was walking behind the parent and then disappeared, and then there are no tracks. The tracks just stop in the middle of mud.
Yeah.
right? So something yanked him up, which is why sometimes they talk about eagles. As crazy as it sounds, it's like my boy was literally taken into the sky. You know, and then, but some of them certainly are abductions because we're. Go on, sir.
Well, you're talking about eagles. We've talked on the show before about other types of, like fantastical birds, like the thunderbirds up in at the Bridgewater Triangle up in Massachusetts, and like there's been other stories of the giant predatory birds that were mythical or whatever.
There have been pterodactyl sightings.
Yeah.
Right,
in Texas and stuff.
Yeah, pterodactyls. What? Actual
Seriously,
pterodactyl.
I'm not even making it.
I was going along with you for a second, and I didn't realize you were being serious.
No, I'm not joking. There
Like
have
that-
been people who have claimed to have spotted pterodactyls flying through the air.
Well, they've claimed to spot pterodactyls in other types of dinosaurs in the Amazon too. I mean, that's not a first in the Congo.
Yeah, I know.
and whatnot,
We talked about that last week, I think it was.
Well, some of these cases, I'm just throwing this out here, most certainly are terrestrial abductors, because there was a case where there was a camper and the married couple decided to go on a walk at dusk, and they left the cat, their daughter, and their son back at the camper, right? But they were walking in a big circle around it. Well, they hear a noise like the camper slam, the camper door slam. They run back, and their boy's missing. The cat's still asleep. The daughter's still asleep, but the boy's missing. And the sheriff literally thought that they had done something, right? So instead of doing search and rescue, they do the prisoner's dilemma on these two and finally realize that they didn't do it, right? So you're talking about a terrestrial abductor there. Most certainly. Yeah.
I think that, well, and like we were saying, it's very possible for there to be different causes. So yeah, I don't discount that a lot of these probably have mundane explanations, however strange they may seem. I wouldn't be surprised.
There's a tendency when someone goes missing near water, people just write it off. You see, this really gets into like people's blind spots in their minds. They're like, well, sometimes people go missing. Well, he's probably at the bottom of the river or something. But there's been cases where elderly men, on a white water rafting trip, which wasn't really white water, but they go missing in a box cabin. Well, there's literally, the water is 12 inches deep. There's literally nowhere for him to go, and he's missing, but people will write it off if there's water. There's been cases where they dammed rivers to look for these boys' bodies, and the dogs are telling you he went up in the mountains, but they want to think that he went into the water.
I wonder if that is one of the reasons that people tend to go missing near water, is because if this is some sort of predatorial thing, whatever it may be, as a way to throw people off the trail, if someone goes missing near water and they know humans think, oh, hey, he fell in the water. If I were some sort of creature that were snatching people up, that's probably what I would do.
No, that's a good point. It's because we're talking about intelligence here, because the windows are so narrow, and they decided to grab a kid and not grab the adult. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like you're dealing with an intelligent abductor.
Yeah, it shows some sort of predatorial intelligence, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a case, I guess I was talking about it during the break. My buddy, he was in Arkansas for a school, and he decided to go up to like the Arkansas or the Ozark National Forest or whatever. And he has a near miss story that's pretty good. We walked up this trail alone for 2 miles and then set up camp at a good campsite. And then after talking on the phone for a while, he decided that, fuck this, I want to go sleep in my hotel bed, So he packed up his tent and was on the way back when he had heard all these stories like we are, all these Pleiades stories. Mm-hmm. And he's looking down in his boots and he's like, wow, I'm in a boulder field next to a dry creek bed. Huh. So he perked up his ears, and a rock was thrown from on top of the ridge, right? Because this boulder field was in the middle of a valley that was being, eroded by that creek. And it didn't tumble down the side. It was thrown. And he heard a large creature moving through the woods on top of the ridge. So knowing what we know, from hearing these stories, he decided that, well, if anything's going to get me, it's going to get me from the other direction. He pulled his 1911 and got next to a tree so that things could only come at him from one way. And he sat there and listened to whatever moving on top of the ridge, breaking, branches, that sort of thing, a large creature. And then he's like, to hell with this. And he ran up the trail all the way back to his car and called me. And that's how I know the story, because it was right after it happened. So that was, if you get distracted in the woods, you might want to look at the opposite direction. That might be a good way to, not get abducted.
And that's such a predatorial thing, too, to make noise and then come the other way. Like that requires some sort of intelligence to do. You mentioned the rock throwing and the branches and stuff breaking, and the first thing I thought of was Bigfoot, especially the rocks being thrown. For whatever reason, a lot of these Sasquatch stories always seem to involve boulders being thrown, rocks being thrown, that sort of thing.
Yeah, when it actually happens, it's like your mind races. It's like we were talking about, well, did you stumble across someone's meth lab or something? Or they're still out there in the forest where they're trying to, get you to go away. And then the more we talked about it, the more it seemed like, well, no, that would be the last place you would want it, is near a trail, Yeah. So you start eliminating possibilities, and whatever remains, however improbable, is the truth.
I really think that sums up this whole episode, because what remains seems so improbable, but I don't know what else it could be. You mentioned the meth lab, though, and my brother and my dad went on a four-wheeling trip one time in West Virginia, and they were with a group, like 10, 15 people, something like that, and they actually did stumble, not across the meth lab, but somewhere near one or a still or something, because they got shot at. They weren't having branches thrown at them or rocks thrown at them. There was bullets, cracking the branches over their head. So, they're on four-wheelers, so they got out of there and everyone was fine. But if I'm running a meth lab, I'm not going to do some weird Bigfoot thing, like I'm throwing boulders down the hill or whatever,
You're absolutely right. And Paulides talks about that, because most people, their minds go to serial killers. There are serial killers in our parks, and our dumbass, federal service, Forest Service is not doing their due diligence, because, they're federal, they're a bureaucracy. And, but search and rescue would find, marijuana patches, meth labs, stills. The search and rescue would find all these things if people went missing near them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the only reason that these things aren't found all the time is because people aren't stumbling across them. It's not hard to figure out if you see big metal cans in the woods, you have some sort of still. It's not hard to figure out what a pot leaf looks like and why there's a big patch of them growing in one spot. So I think that if it was something like that, I think more people would run across them. And also, you wouldn't want to make people disappear if you have a meth lab in the woods, because if someone disappears where your meth lab is nearby, the search and rescue people are going to find it. So it would be in my best interest to just make them get out of there. I would maybe shoot a gun at their feet or something to try to scare them off. I wouldn't abduct them. I wouldn't be snatching 2-year-olds 20 feet away from their parents when they aren't looking.
You're absolutely right. And, if it is an abductor, we're talking about something that's powerful, too, because most of these people have backpacks. Right.
Like you said, abduct? Some of them were men. You said, who's going to abduct a 150, 170-pound guy in a 50-pound backpack? That's 225 pounds. That's not, you're going to need a couple of people or one really big Sasquatch.
I've carried people with rucksacks before. It is not easy to do.
I have too, and I'm fairly strong, and it's not fun.
No, you can't, and you cannot do it quietly. Especially if they're not cooperating. It's hard enough when you have a willing participant and you're doing, some sort of PT thing and doing it. But if you have someone who doesn't want to be taken and they're wearing a backpack and they're screaming and punching at you, you're not going to do it. You're just not. There's no possible way.
Yeah, that's
think about how much.
Go on.
Think about how much evidence that's going to leave wherever you're going. If there's a struggle, it's going to be pretty obvious with shit broken everywhere, stuff torn off.
Yeah, blood. Even if you're with a group of deaf people and you get kidnapped, there's still going to be signs of a struggle. There's still going to be crashing branches and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah,
it's not just going to be poof and gone.
Right. Now the toddlers, it really seems like abduction, but like the men that went missing up in Yellowstone, I'm talking about like boulder fields, which is why people's minds go to portals, dimensional whatever, as an explanation, because there's a long folk history about, especially like in Iceland, about things that live, fairy people that live in the boulders. Don't screw with them.
Yeah, I personally, after reading all of this, I ran across someone that made a really long effort post about fairies being the culprit for the majority of these, and I really, honestly do believe it's fairies, like 100%. I think that's what it is. So the cases match. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You fairy.
I was gonna say, let me get this straight. You believe it's fairies, but my moon theories are weird. Okay, just checking.
Fair. I'm when it comes to conspiracies versus paranormal, I'm more of the paranormal kind of guy.
I know. I'm messing with you. No, that's honestly, no, I've never heard that. So somebody tell me about the fairies in the boulders. I've never heard this.
Okay, so when you say fairies, everyone kind of laughs because they think Tinkerbell or something like that, Some cute little gay little thing that flies around, has sparkly wands and all that gay shit.
It's flying on high guys.
Fairies has hey guys. not that kind of fairy. Fairies as a folktale thing are very old. I don't know how far these folktales go back, but they go back before was the Brothers Grimm who wrote all those stories. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. I love the Brothers Grimm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Fae are very Celtic too.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing about these folktales. A lot of the things match up with these missing 411 people. Like people tend to disappear near boulder fields. That's a fairy thing. They live inside of the boulders, supposedly. That's one of the folktale aspects of it, is the fairies live inside boulders. People tend to disappear near berry bushes. One of the there was this book that was talked about in this post I found. This book was published in 1910, and it's called The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries by W.Y. Evans Wentz. And it talks about a lot of the aspects of fairies. Like I said, they disappear near berry bushes. One of the things that Europeans used to know was you don't pick berries after Halloween because those have been claimed by the Fae folk. And if you do, they're going to be pissed off. And you don't want to piss off fairies because they are so supernatural. They have more powers than you can comprehend. They can make you disappear. They can spirit you away to their land if they want. Circles of rocks you're not supposed to enter because if you go inside, you can't get out without them pushing you out, basically. Time travels differently. So I guess they are kind of, they kind of are fairies. In the other, but time travels differently for them. So if they snatch you and you're gone partying with them, because this is another thing that supposedly used to happen, is someone would get snatched by the fairies. They'd go party with the fairies for a night. They'd be dancing and cavorting and whatever. They would come back and they would find that 10 years have passed. There was one story about a groom who was abducted at his wedding, and he was there for like a week or something like that. He gets kicked out of fairy world. He comes back, and he found one old woman who was a young girl at the wedding who remembered it. Everyone else had died because so much time had passed. And that would go towards... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the Fae are actually scary, right? I mean,
they're fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it's like a diabolical creature you have to make a deal with or something, because the Fae will steal babies and replace them with fake people called changelings. And, you might raise that changeling thinking that it's a real person, but if it fails to thrive or like a normal human being, well, then a lot of people thought, in Ireland thought that's a fucking changeling.
Yeah, they would do a swap, and they would replace the baby with a lookalike. They used their glamour, I think it's called their magic, to replace a baby with one of their elderly or one of their terminally sick. And they would turn your baby into one of them. Another thing that is talked about in this book is the weather changes after a person disappears. And this is something else. It's not only found in Celtic folklore, it's also found in Native American folklore as well. A lot of the things have strange parallels. And I think that's interesting, especially when you consider where these people disappear, is lands that Native Americans used to inhabit. So maybe it's something that kind of got picked up over time, you know?
Mm-hmm. Because when you mentioned the Celtic thing, earlier we talked about there's a lot of cases that this happened. So my immediate thought was like, okay, so it's a Celtic, Celtic mythology, so it makes sense for them to happen, that style of abduction or incident to happen on, in British Isles. And I thought, well, why is it happening here? Well, what if they just followed people because it was, Anglos, Anglo-Irish, Scots-Irish, that type of people that settled the United States, but or North America at the time.
Well, not only that, but it happened to the Native Americans as well.
Yeah.
And that could also explain the predilection to abduct white people with Germanic names and who are Germanic in Celtic.
Yeah, in Iceland, they'll actually move a road to make sure it doesn't disturb boulders, so they don't have to move the boulders because their faith is so strong in these things. Iceland is a bunch of Viking men that went and abducted some Irish women, right, and created a new race out on that island. And they have stories like, you're not supposed to set things on boulders because they'll go missing. Like, you'll put a hammer down, you'll turn around to work on something, turn around, your hammer will be gone. That's because the fairies got it, dummy. You're not supposed to set stuff on there.
And isn't it interesting how, I don't know if we talked about this, but a lot of these people will disappear after hanging out on these boulders.
Yeah, they'll sit down on a boulder to take a stone out of their boot. That's the last place people saw them, and then they're gone.
Yeah. Another thing that popped up in this book is that young men are taken, usually those who are athletic or gifted. For whatever reason, I guess they look attractive to the fairies, I guess. I don't know. But a lot of smart, young, athletic men tend to disappear in these areas.
Yeah, a sobering coincidence is about all the young college-age men who are all for their class that go missing. And everyone writes it off because there's alcohol in. Well, some of these cases, the coroners are like, well, there's GHB. We found GHB in their system, when they were floating in the water. So, people want to write it off, but they don't scan. There's several poisons they don't scan for, when they're doing an autopsy, but they should, That one almost sounds like serial killers or something.
Yeah, that one I think is probably more of a serial killer thing just because I don't think fairies are putting Rohypnol or whatever in people's drinks. But
GHB, I don't think the fairies have access to those kind of drugs. You never know, though. You never know. I mean,
yeah, but if they have like magic, it seems like it'd be easier for them to use.
Yeah, magic. I would think magic would be than trying to slip a roofie into somebody's. I don't know. A lot of these people are they drinking anything when they disappear? So like, how would they get roofied? When they're out there hiking or sitting down, like you said, taking a rock out of their shoe.
Yeah, the story begins with the people in the woods, and he excluded all city disappearances because there's so many things that can happen to you in a city, right? And that's what makes these cases so mysterious. Is that where are you going to go out on a trail? Another case talking about these outdoors cases. There was a kid that went up to Crater Lake during the winter to go photograph the park in snow. Well, he's found years later by hikers 15 miles away from where he was last seen, the parking lot. And, the rangers that found him, they said it was really bizarre. How did he get there, right? Because without snowshoes, you cannot, travel through these snow drifts. There's no way you can make it, And so, that's... The long distances, from going missing in the woods, that's the outdoors thing. I really consider the young men going missing in cities to be a separate issue. They always end up in water, You know, that's really a separate case of disappearances. Paulides wrote another book about hunters that go missing. Because hunters are the last people that you think would really, go missing, because they're armed and they know the woods really well. He didn't expect to find a lot of them, but he did. Yeah. There's the guy named Bert Schleier that went up to Canada, and he went up there to bow hunt, and this man had hunted Africa, South America. He was a professional hunter, and in fact, he's hunting like elk with a bow, because he's like such a Rambo-style badass. Right, and they have to use a puddle jumper to get him up there. Well, the puddle jumper that comes to relieve him, to give him more supplies, he like stops, gets out on the pontoon, and he gets the creeps, right? So he leaves, and then they come back with rangers, Canadian like Royal Mounties, and they find that he's dead. All they find are like his blue jeans and a few small bones in his socks. Right, so this man, they think he must have been attacked from behind, but they don't know what did it. Because he's such a pro. I mean, if you hunt Africa, are you really going to let a grizz sneak up on you?
Right.
They know he was in a tree stand, and that he was calling in like an elk, and he had his baklava and his bow. So.
Yeah, especially if he was in a tree stand, like. What is a bear going to climb up there and abduct you and
that's
eat you?
just weird.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he. What's interesting to me is that the guy that came to relieve him had no reason to believe that there was anything wrong. But when he just gets out on the pontoon in the lake, he feels creeped out.
Yeah, and that kind of pops up as well in a lot of these near misses or whatever you want to call them, is people just get the creeps for whatever reason.
Yeah, and a lot of the hunter stories, I think that one's called Devil in the Details, and that's because so many times in these stories, they go missing near Devil's Stool, Devil's Knob, Devil's Peak, Devil's Nest. Devil shows up over and over again.
Right. You think it has something to do with that being like near where fairies live, and they just named it that?
Yeah, devil usually means something supernatural when you look at topography, right? Like there's some sort of a volcanic formation that doesn't make any sense. They'll call it Devil's Stool or Devil's Tower or something.
That's so strange.
Well, they go missing near there, places like that. And let's go through real quick. I mean, there's never been a case where a man that was armed with other people and had a transponder went missing like this. But each one of those by themselves, people have gone missing. Berries, picking berries is common, especially with the children. They go and pick berries and they go missing. Wearing bright clothes does not help you. Bright yellow, bright red, those are the people that go missing, not the people wearing camo.
It also seems like people tend to disappear at certain times of the day. I know he said it was like between 2:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. is usually when these people disappear.
Yeah, in the afternoon, where you think it would be at night or something.
Yeah, it's very counterintuitive. Like if I didn't know anything about this and someone's like, "Hey, don't disappear in the woods," what do you do? I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to be out there at night, and I'm probably going to wear bright clothing during the day." Of course I'm not going to disappear, but that's exactly the thing that causes you to disappear.
Yeah, and dry creek beds. Wherever a dry creek bed crosses a trail, that's a good place to go missing. And that's because dry creek beds don't leave much evidence, is what people are thinking. An abductor could get you out of there on a dry creek bed, and there would hardly be any evidence of it.
Right, there's not going to be any footprints or anything like that.
So, yeah, these stories are scary. I mean, they go on. There are thousands. There's a Boy Scout in North Carolina. I think it's Toccoa Gap. Can you guys hear me? Pretty.
Yeah,
it chopped up a little bit, but I got it.
Yeah. This Boy Scout was coming out with some older Eagle Scouts, and they were in a big troop that were coming down this trail, and he is tired. And so the Eagle Scouts are like, "Look, we got a rear guard that's coming up. Sit down on this rock and wait. And then the rear guard will get you and we'll get out of there." Well, by the time everyone gets to the end of the trail, it's starting to snow and this kid's gone. The rear guard never saw him, right? So they go back in there and they hunt for him, search and rescue, and they find him. He had laid all his stuff out on a creek, out on a rock in the middle of the creek, like he was doing inventory of his pack. And then he had gone into the woods, pulled his arms into his coat, and died of exposure. Well, where was he going? Why didn't he just stay there on the trail? Why did he go out in the middle of nowhere? It took forever to find him. You know, it's like he was scared off the trail or something, and then got lost.
Yeah. I think something else that's interesting is just how often this pops up in different cultures. It seems like every culture has something, if not fairies, some sort of small creatures or whatever. You know,
That
you have
abduct things. That abduct people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, there's all sorts of trickster creatures or deities in pretty much every culture that do these sorts of things.
Yeah, there's always at least one. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, actually.
Yeah, it's each one of these cases is different. I mean, there was a young woman that went missing. I think it was in Yosemite, and she was tossed from the top of a waterfall. Tossed. They say tossed because that's the only way that she could get so far out, away from the waterfall.
Wow. She probably would have drowned had she just fallen over. Hold on, was this abduction? She never disappeared, never came back, or like they found her alive?
She went to the top of this waterfall and then fell off of it. They found her body at the bottom of it, but it's like she had been launched. And there's also some vaginal tearing there.
Oh, she did die. She did die. Okay.
See, that one sounds like a serial killer thing to me.
Yeah. You said vaginal tearing, as in like she might have been raped?
Yes, but the soft parts of your body are the first to be preyed upon too by scavengers, like your tongue and your lips. So we don't know. I mean, if her pudenda was just exposed, maybe some animals. What's infuriating about all this is that this should be treated like murders are in a city.
Right.
There should be coroner reports and everything.
And there's not.
They found a shelter area in that case, and that's why I bring it up, because who was living in that shelter? They called it a shelter, and it was like a bunch of dead trees and branches were put in above a little bed area. So I mean, was there was a man sitting out in the forest,
or was it
that one to me
Bigfoot
almost sounds
sitting
like a
out in the
serial
forest?
killer type thing.
Yeah.
How would he launch her from a water, pick her up and just overhead toss? I mean, sounds like something out of a cartoon.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Right, so that could possibly have been one of the Sasquatch ones, maybe?
Yeah. See, I'm trying to remember all the cases that involve, like, Sasquatch. There's a great case up in Michigan at the turn of the 20th century where this girl's father was lumbering, doing timber on top of a mountain, and she liked to ride the timber carts on the way down the mountain, right? And she would do this over and over again and then hitch a ride on the cart to go back to the top where her father was. Well, she goes missing off of one of these carts, but they find her, right? They go and they get two hunters. This is back when everyone's Christian. They're like, hell yeah, we're going to look for her, And so they all go out and they find her next to a river, and they said that there was like this furry-like creature that was running from her when they found her. And, her father asked her all these questions, and she called him a big dog, right? Because, there's not only Sasquatch legends, but there's dogmen legends, too. She kept saying that he was like a big wolf or a big dog, and that he gave her berries to eat.
This reminds me of a story from kind of where I grew up when I was a kid. There is a town in Ohio, not even a town, it's like a little village hamlet type thing, and I think it's probably now incorporated into another town. But it was called the town of Crosswick. And there was something called the Crosswick Monster that tried to abduct these kids one time as they were, I want to say they were fishing. But it was basically described as like a large lizard type creature. And it snatched one of these kids up while they were fishing. The other kid ran back, and they got some people, and they hunted it down. They chased it into a tree. And I think they got the kid who was stolen. I think they got him back. But this creature ran into like a hollow tree, and they cut the tree down, and they never found it. And I know there's more details to the story. I can't remember, but it's called the Crosswick Monster, if you want to look it up. But that's the only sighting there's been of that. But this is in Ohio. Like, this isn't out in Yosemite or anywhere. It's just some giant lizard that tried to steal these kids. And there were multiple witnesses who saw this thing.
there's a lot of local monsters or cryptozoology. There's a Beast of Bray Road in southern Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, no, we're getting off. We're going to get off topic because we can talk about local cryptids for days.
Yeah, you're right.
There's many of them. But the 411 stories have had some ties, possibly with Sasquatches or dogmen or wolfmen or whatever. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So being as that these ones are mostly in national parks and whatever, do you think that, aside from the ferry, do you think that really there could be a Sasquatch tie-in personally? Do you think so?
Yeah, and let me remind you that a lot of these people go missing next to parks. Like, if you have properties that are near a park on the edge, there are a lot of kids that go missing in those backyards next to a park.
Okay. But so you're a Sasquatch believer?
I don't know. I keep my mind open about Sasquatch, especially when you have tangible problems like this. These are almost surely abductions. A lot of them are. Well,
right.
Who could abduct someone?
Right, that size. Like we were saying, like a 160-pound guy in a 50-pound backpack. There's no, like we said, a team of people aren't going to be able to do that.
Well, there are stories about Sasquatches that basically throw tree stumps like they're javelins.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think if you have something snatching people, it would almost have to be something like a Sasquatch that can just pick you up like nobody's business.
Well, we've also done the episode with Mr. K a couple weeks back with the giant Kandahar. So I mean, there's actual proof of giant somethings on this planet.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what's to say? Like now in California, the giants that supposedly used to inhabit, large areas of California, who's to say that that's not some sort of species that we've chased underground, and there's some sort of Hollow Earth giant subculture or something.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of these could be giants, and like we've said, there could be multiple explanations, and I think all the ones we've talked about could possibly be responsible.
How would giants not leave, like,
big
footprints
and
giant?
Stuff, yeah.
Like
even
like
Sasquatch, wouldn't Sasquatch leave footprints?
Well, bipeds naturally are toe walkers. Now, human beings like to walk on their heels a lot, but when we ran and did long-distance persistence hunting, we would always be running on our toes. So, I mean, it's not going to be – if it's got a giant foot, you might only have toe evidence is what I'm saying. Because all human beings naturally run on their toes. Yeah. Now, if it is a predatory creature, if Sasquatch is real, then it's going to take a lot of calories – for it to survive. And if it has to be a hunter. It just has to be. There's no way that it can be an herbivore. And, calorically speaking. And it could, if it's a pack hunter, it could have all sorts of complicated, scary behavior, like distractions, distract you and then attack you from the other side,
Right. It's super interesting because I am kind of on the fence with the Bigfoot thing, and I know we're gonna go ahead and do a Bigfoot episode. We'll get the Bigfoot roundtable. We'll get your buddy who is into this Sasquatch. We got Asmodor to come on. He's big into Sasquatch, and we'll do like a right wing Sasquatch spoopy roundtable. How about that with the Bigfoot thing? Because I'm kind of
Sasquatch squad.
Right wing Sasquatch squads. That's right. I'm kind of on the fence with it because the Talmud Vision people have invested a whole bunch of money into these Sasquatch shows and the squatching industry and stuff. And
well, you have to consider the way they make those people look too.
Right.
Like, are you saying that they wouldn't do it if it were real?
I'm not saying that they wouldn't, but it's kind of like my deal with, like, we've talked about, like, the Ancient Aliens show. They give you like 60% like reality, 20% complete conjecture, and then 20% like agendized,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the Sasquatch shows contained a lot of disinfo. Like that wouldn't surprise
Yeah.
me one bit. Or they make the people hunting them look like retards.
They
you know?
they always do. Yeah, they always get
Joke
they got the one fat guy with the hat. I've seen the show a couple of times, and it's like,
Oh, the squatching guy.
yeah, the squatching guy. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, we'll have to
come
buy
on,
squatching.
dude. Yeah, we all gotta buy
You
squatching
have
hats.
to buy those hats before the episode. We'll all wear the squatching hats.
But no, but like the disappearances in the national parks and the forest and stuff. I mean, I could see something like that happening, you know, and where like the part that I believe is like that's, you know, it's completely possible that there are some sort of, because I also believe in like interdimensional type things. So there could be some sort of, like you're saying, like with the rocks and whatever, some sort of portal, some sort of, you know, maybe they are from another dimension. Like I remember
It's not outside. Well, that's the other thing. It's not outside the realm of possibility to assume that maybe Sasquatches aren't entirely terrestrial.
Right. There's
Maybe
the
there's some
theory
sort
that
of
they're
interdimensional thing.
yeah, exactly. They're interdimensional or extraterrestrial beings that have somehow managed to manipulate these portals to kidnap.
I think they've been.
I mean, we know at
spotted
least
around
one
the UFOs.
Sasquatch.
Hmm?
Groot 2.
Oh, that's true.
That's true. We don't
Well,
we don't know him
if
personally.
you go through the possibilities fall into, you know, different realms. Like the abductor could be serial killers. It could be a, you know, cryptozoid. Something about nature we don't understand. It could be, you know, portals. It could be, you know, something that messes with our minds. You know, like crystals or something in the granite. There could be something about human nature we don't understand, and that includes the demonic possession. Because it's sort of scary to think that one day, you know, 1 minute you can be normal, and the next minute you're running at a right angle off into the wilderness, you know, with no memory of why you're doing it. You know, that's sort of strange. You know, because that's what most people want to believe, that these people are leaving the trails on their own and walking out of there, out into the middle of nowhere and dying, and just haven't been found. And it's like, well, I mean, why would someone do that?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And the fact that they're found, you know, a lot of times in very good condition, even though they've been gone for weeks.
Yeah,
You know, like,
well,
they haven't really decomposed. No animals or bugs have gotten to them or any sort of.
Well, that goes into that whole time passing differently theory with the fairies. You know, maybe they did only die 2 days before from their, you know, perspective.
Right. That's true. It could be. This is
Yeah,
crazy.
the biggest problem with the portal theory is that it's almost like abduction because it's predatory, right? The portals aren't open all the time. They open up for the last person in line or the first person in line, and then they close. You know, that's
They're
the
like
real
Venus
problem with the portal
flytraps.
theory.
They're invisible
Yeah,
Venus
exactly.
flytraps, is grabbing people into the ether and spitting them out 19 miles away. Like it's some sort of wormhole.
Now, yeah, I will tell you his latest story, which he calls the Predator story, and he wouldn't even publish it if it weren't for the provenance. There's a man that he respects that works for NASA, and he's a digital photography expert. And it was something that happened to his wife. But basically, she was bow hunting, and she takes some pictures out in the trees when we have one of these states where, you know, something's not right. You know, like everything goes quiet. And she decided to take some pictures because she's married to a scientist and figures that's what you ought to do. Well, when they get it back, the phone is taking pictures that are impossible for it to take, you know, because of the pixels, right? But she describes basically like the movie Predator. You know, there's something that's translucent that disrupts light that's moving, you know, in the trees away from her bow stand.
Oh, man,
And,
when you said
Apologies
Predator,
possesses-
you meant like Schwarzenegger Predator. Wow.
Yeah, stick around. Yeah, that 1980s Predator. Yeah,
Right. Wow.
but you know that does like go along with what Scott described. You know, if there's invisible things out there. You know, maybe if unless they move, you can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just throwing that out there as another explanation. Maybe
that's
there
crazy.
are abductors.
Maybe there are. Maybe it's a combination of like, you know, the alien with the like that camo technology that they have or whatever it's called, and maybe Bigfoot and portals and fairies and damn.
What really gets me is the one stories that like they can't see something, but they know what's there, and they know if they could see it, what it would be, and then like the thorn bush story. Because to me, like I could imagine having that experience, and then for the rest of my life, I just never could know if like my perception would just be permanently like you'd be permanently gaslit about your perception of reality.
And no one would believe you.
Right.
Right.
That's another thing. Yeah, like who's gonna believe people that actually say, "Yeah, it was Bigfoot," and like we went and ate berries, and then he brought me back. What? Like you know what I mean? People aren't gonna believe that.
Yeah, there was an invisible creature chasing me.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. There's over how many thousand of these stories?
There's over 1,200 that Paulides
Over 1,200.
has.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, 1,200. I thought it was more than that. For some reason, I'm thinking of something else then. 1,200 of them, and there are people that say that it's only 1,200. I mean, it's not like it's that even crazy of an amount. It's not that it's the amount of them, because like I said, like hundreds of thousands of people go missing, but these are like you said, just the fact that there's no explanation for it, for a lot of these.
Yeah, I was just going to say the reason why it's only 1,200 is they got to eliminate the bad cases and really concentrate on the ones that have no explanation. So if you go missing next to a road, no one's going to think anything of it. They'll just think a serial killer got you.
Okay.
Even if it's an amazing story.
Right. So that's one way to counter signal the counter signaling is by saying that these are inexplicable cases, really. And they have they have been sorted out from the mundane types of kidnappings and disappearances and whatever. These are actually really unexplainable. So I get that.
He's very methodical about it. It's not like someone comes up to him with a story and then he just rushes to put it in a book. Like the amount of cases that are eliminated, Search and Rescue finds 99% of the people who go missing, whether it's alive or dead.
Mm-hmm.
So most people who go missing in national parks are actually found, but it's the ones that aren't that bring up so many questions.
Now that you're talking about statistics, let me say that there's something called missing presumed dead, where for legal purposes, they just go ahead and say that you're dead, so you're no longer missing. So the national parks can take you off the books. We have no idea how many people go missing because of that.
Okay, I didn't actually know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like you're missing for a while, and then you're declared dead, and then you don't exist anymore statistically.
I would love to find out the numbers, but you're not going to find out from the national parks.
What we need is to really put a lot of pressure on the national parks to keep track of this, because even the most podunk police force does.
Yeah, I do think that would be the most prudent thing to do, because I don't know what else you would do. Yeah.
I think it's going to be shocking.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think it would be shocking if we ever found out, but I'm really skeptical that we will.
Mm.
Yeah.
Even if we do find, if somebody finds out, they're not going to tell us.
No, of course not. They're cooking the books to make it seem like less people are missing than actually go missing. Mm-hmm. They don't want to give information about the case. It's just not going to happen for whatever reason, whether they know what's doing it or not, or whether they just want to not scare people away. They're just not going to talk about it.
Right. Man,
and that's kind of
that's kind of fucked up, actually.
Yeah, it is. To kind of give my thoughts on the whole thing, to sum it up, it's frustrating to end this episode having not really figured out anything and having more questions than answers, and more questions than when it started.
Oh, definitely. I have a lot more questions now than at the beginning of the show. Even Paulides doesn't even have an explanation, really. He says...
Well, he doesn't talk about it, which I think is probably the best thing to do. Because
I thought that he said
if you present just the facts...
I thought that he had said that I don't give you a... what do you call it? I don't give you an answer, but I just present to you a series of facts.
Right,
And
he
that's like his
does.
that's like his thing. That
I've
way he
heard
gets out of
supposedly.
that's how he gets out of having to give an
Yeah.
explanation for things. Yeah.
Well, I heard supposedly from people who are close to the guy. I mean, not I haven't heard personally, but I've heard people say that he has his theories, but he just doesn't talk about them because he just wants to give the facts, which I think is really the best way to go about it.
He's got to
Yeah, well,
have
he's-
theories, you know. I mean, he's the guy doing all this documenting of all these disappearances and stuff and investigating them and whatever. He's got to have theories. I mean, you know, you can't not doing that many of those.
Yeah, well, every investigator has a conceptual framework, and that's how, because there's an infinite amount of evidence to go out there and find, right? So you gotta concentrate on your money makers. So if you think people are wandering off the trail, you're going to look for one kind of evidence, that sort of thing, right? So he's had theories, but he admits that you could tell, and I'll just tell you my belief on it, is that he probably started off thinking that all this was Sasquatch, because he believes in Sasquatch. But when he moved to the cities and started concentrating on the young men found in rivers, well, there's no explanation for that. So he's like a witness that for the missing now. And if he told his Sasquatch theory or any other theory, like, people would come up and feel like they're being abused. You know, the people that are still looking for their toddlers and stuff. You know, they're being
Right.
abused by some Sasquatch hunter. You know.
Right. That makes sense. Well, damn, dude,
So,
there's a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot to this, man. I didn't think it was going to be this much. I'm actually quite impressed, and now
really spooked.
yeah, Adam is spooked. Like, you all right there, buddy?
This shit
Like
made
I
me-
was when you first told that story about the Thornbush thing, like I was like really fucked out, like psychosomatic response.
Yeah, there's a lot
Quitting.
of stories like that too.
I'll go find the audio of that guy saying no, stop it, as he's
Oh,
dying.
jeez.
I'll tell you right now, I am not listening to that. I'm
I
just
mean, I'm
not.
gonna do it, but I'm gonna regret it immediately.
Wow, this was a good one, guys. I think we covered it pretty well.
Oh god.
You guys covered it pretty well. Like, I had more questions and knowledge. I mean, I like barely knew anything about this, but wow, it's a lot of stuff. And the more I think about it, like the fairies and the boulder stories, I'm gonna look into that a little more. But there's just so many things we don't know. You know, and this is one. of them.
One thing, I was just looking over the notes I did for this episode. A lot of times, people will be found at way higher elevations than they go missing at. Like 1,200 feet higher.
Right up the mountain.
Way up the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Miles and miles away and up the mountain. That's freaking
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. This sort of thing made me not like the woods.
I heard Paulides say, he's like, "No, I'm not trying to keep you people from going out in the woods. Don't do that. Go explore nature, but do it arm in arm."
Yeah. No
So-
thanks. I'll just stay in the house.
Yeah. Wow.
I went to,
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
funny story. Well, it's a funny story, kind of related. My wife and I went to a cabin last summer down in Virginia, just for like a little week-long vacation type thing. We left after the first night. It was so creepy there. Like, it was. They had a big wraparound porch, and like, it was on like a hillside in Virginia, and it was just, you could not see anything at night. And something about it just freaked us both out. We just both got out of there the next morning and
Good
left
thing you did.
immediately. I don't know. I don't really care for the woods. I'm not a woods guy.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I understand that. There's something that you guys made me think of. It's like, if this is fae or fairies, it's like, wouldn't you expect more Scotch-Irish to be disappearing instead of Germans?
Well, maybe they're, I don't know, closely
Maybe
related.
the fairies
enough.
are still
I don't know.
pissed about World War II.
Germans usually seem to have some sort of covenant with the dwarves. Like, all the German miners have stories about, like, these little creatures that mine with them, you know?
Oh, yeah, Tommy knockers, aren't they?
Yeah,
Is that the-
yeah.
Is that
I
the
think
what?
you got it.
There
Tommyknockers.
there used to be a root beer called Tom. There might still be. It's a very delicious root beer called Tommyknocker. But yeah,
There was a horror movie called The
dwarves that live in
Tommyknockers, too.
hillsides and stuff.
There were what? They live in the hillside. They're little dwarves that live in the hillside. And they like mine stuff out of the
Yeah,
ground.
like just
right?
little
Yeah.
creatures. Yeah, I think so.
There was a
Miners
horror
have
movie called The
stories about-
Tommyknockers too. It was like, I remember it being quite scary in the 80s.
Yeah, that's a Stephen King made-for-TV movie. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, was it made for TV? Okay. All right, whatever. It still scared the shit out of me. I was young. So.
No, it's a good one. It's like It's made for TV, but it's
Oh
good.
my, yeah, it was, man, I still can't watch that to this day, sort of. I mean, I can watch it, but I don't like it.
Yeah, it's
I don't mind clowns.
like
that
it.
one really makes me not like clowns.
yeah, the sewer thing. Was,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
God.
Hey, kid. No, I'm good.
Okay.
All
They all
right.
float
So,
down here, John.
right. Oh, God. All right.
Sometimes they float to the top of a mountain.
That's right.
Do you got any emails or anything? I think
Yeah,
we basically
I'm gonna go-
covered everything we can cover.
We have a couple emails. We have from the reactionary hippie. We have. I'm not going to read this all because it's a very well. It's not. It's show suggestions. Guess he mentioned show on USOs, of course. Bermuda Triangle, electrical and spiritual vortices, crop circles, ghost orbs, astrology, tarot, more on synchronicity and ESP and telekinesis, profiles of paranormal individuals like, of course, Madame Blavatsky, Alan Watts, Robert Anton Wilson, the Psychonauts, and then ancient civilizations. So, and other conspiracies. I don't know. There's a whole lot. He wrote a whole lot of stuff in between them. But for show topics, I think all of those are stuff we've already considered.
Yeah,
anything
I
in
would
there?
like to do all those.
Yeah, I would like to do all the
the thing
things.
about the people would be kind of interesting. Have we done that before? Like a show just dedicated to like a specific historical person?
I don't think we have done one whole show on a particular person yet. We've
Well, I
we
mean,
did
JFK.
well besides
That's more
JFK,
about
but
conspiracy.
yeah, but no, when we did we did not really. I mean, like we talked about, like when we talked about the Bohemian Grove, we talked about the people involved, but we haven't actually done an entire show on, say, like Aleister Crowley or whatever. We could do that for sure.
Mr.
Okay.
Crowley.
Oh yeah, of course, and of course we'll have to get monetized because we're gonna have to play that. So, how do you get away with not getting monetized for using stuff?
Who, me?
Yeah, don't you not, or do you just not post on YouTube? Is what it is.
I use original content. Patty and Mr. Bond, I got their permission.
Right on.
Never heard of original content. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We'd have to find a new solution.
Right. Well, this has been fun, dude. Misonius, man, thanks for stopping by again, man. Your wealth of encyclopedia knowledge is always welcome here.
I can't even
thanks.
believe how knowledgeable you are.
Oh, I mean, I love this topic because I have trouble sleeping, and for some reason, I just love to scare the shit out of myself by listening to these stories. So,
Right on, man. Well, thanks for coming by. We'll definitely have you back.
Do you avoid the woods now that you know about all this?
yes, I really am scared when I go in the woods. Honestly,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I can't.
You guys are going to make me scared to go in the woods. I love the woods. Don't do this to me now.
Well, the
All right.
Tommyknockers will think you're one of them.
Well, Tommy, yeah, exactly. They'll think I'm one of them and wondering why I'm not working. What are you doing hiking? Where's your pick? Where's your
Lazy
pick?
son of a
Yeah.
bitch.
Right? Oh,
you must be
man.
part of the Tommy Knocker Union, you know.
That's right. That's right. Tommy Knockers, local 88. Yeah. All right, fellas. Adam, besides that you're spooked, you okay, bud?
I'm severely spooked.
All right. Yeah, now
I'm gonna need a emergency Ovaltine Tendies injection.
Damn. Scott, you got anything you want to wrap up with?
I don't really think so. Time travel makes you gay. That's about it.
Every fucking time. Okay. Well, all right. For therightstuff.biz, I'm Johnny Monoxide. For Scott Taylor, Adam Haight, and Mr. Miscellaneous Rufus, we have been the Paranormies. And we're going to take you out with a creepypasta. We'll talk to you again next week. Later.
We really mean it. Time travel makes you gay. It's hard to imagine what it's like to be kidnapped. I've tried often, probably every day for the last 4 years, imagining the unlimited scenarios, anything from the kidnapper's first contact to the actual abduction and the subsequent transport. It's plagued me for many sleepless nights. It's hard not to focus on the betrayal he must have felt trusting that stranger. The absolute fear and pain he felt while maybe getting dragged away into some van or truck, thinking of how they may have subdued him if he started to fight back. Sadly, the only thing that brings me some measure of comfort is imagining him poking an eye out or busting that son of a bitch's testicles with a hard kick. I wish that's where my imagination ends when I dwell on my son's kidnapping. But it's not. That rabbit hole is deep and filled with things that take days off my life just by the thought of it. Truth is, neither myself nor my now ex-wife know what really happened. Sometimes I believe I'm on hell on earth. My world has been upside down since my son went missing from my yard. Thinking towards the future is impossible for me now. So my days are cramped up in my home, reliving every detail of the day he went missing. Most disturbing, however, is that the most mundane of things torture the worst. Peering through the kitchen window into the backyard I haven't visited in 4 years and seeing the sun-drained, abandoned swing set and slide. Hearing the theme song for the kids' shows he used to watch all the time. Seeing the back of a head of some other child who slightly resembles mine if he were maybe 4 years older, at the grocery store, or at the park, or wherever. The worst is the sound of the phone ringing. Every time it sounds, my body gets filled with the most conflicting emotions. Is this it? Is this the call when I find out whether he's dead or alive? Or worst, that it's neither. Truth be told, a knock on the door is just as jarring. Never more so than today, as it turned out. I opened the door, and a large man in uniform greeted me with tender eyes and said, "Sir, we've received a call today. Apparently one of your neighbors allowed their cat to get out of the house." Those two sentences couldn't have been more crushing. Another dagger of lost hope, but this one cut especially deep due to the tease of his blue uniform. As the disappointment drenched me from head to toe, the gentleman continued to ask me for a favor. Over the years, the ground under the houses in this neighborhood tends to sink quite a bit. These cats like nesting down there. Do you mind if we go into the backyard and get the cat from under the house? Sir, are you okay? He obviously knew I wasn't. As the blood rushed from my head to my broken heart, all I could mumble was, "Why didn't I know that?"